computer. Yay! I set it up right this time. Perfect. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So we have Barbara Norris leading change in the general surgery unit. So just to give a brief outline, Barbara has been a nurse for quite a long time, and she went back to school to get her master's in nursing management, and then she got hired into a unit that she applied for a job at a unit that seems to have a lot of problems. And so she did an offsite with the group, and they aired some of their issues. And so she has a list of issues about what needs to be done or what she feels like should be done. So so part of our assignment is to talk about what are the root problems that Barbara Norris is facing. Steve, what do you think? Your microphone's off, Steve.
Sorry about that. I have a few things going on in the back.
That's okay.
What do I think?
Yeah, what do you think are the root problems?
Let's see. I got to refresh myself on this. Can we get back to me and then I'll
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
Hey, Owen?
I would say their root issues, the most of the root issues stem from the culture, the work culture.
Okay.
There are also other issues, but I think our reading assignment pointed out that particular one has a much higher effect on the remainder of them than the other ones would. So I think her main objective would be to tackle that one, begin with that one because it's the one with the most issues, and then begin to work on the other four areas, the four drive areas.
Okay. All right, Jonathan?
I agree. I think culture is the biggest problem, and kind of specifically within the culture is there's kind of an us versus them attitude.
Yeah.
The tenured versus the newbies, and there seems to be kind of a feeling of isolation. So part of the reason that there seems to be an us versus them is one of the complaints was from one of the more tenured nurses is, I don't have enough time to get my own job done, let alone yours, so don't come bother me asking for help. And then for the new ones, it didn't seem like there was much of a training opportunity, and they were constantly had questions that they didn't seem to get answered, so they didn't feel like they were progressing either, and that they were just being criticized. So kind of all those things point to just a fractured cultures and kind of an isolation and disunified unit.
Okay. All right. So
I think I would let me add one thing to that, because I did say culture was probably the main thing, but Jonathan, as he was going through that, reminded me, I think the second most important to them, what really was the comprehension of what their job entailed, because those nurses that are singling themselves out going, well, I don't have time to train you, and they don't understand the importance of training that one person that one time, though it takes time to do it the first time you do it, then helps that person become adequate or begin to build a foundation of being able to do that skill that then later you don't have to go back. You can train, observe, correct, and then eventually they get to the point where they can do it on their own. So I think that older staff lack that comprehension as well. So I would say right behind the culture, I'd say that really building on that comprehension of them understanding what it is and then moving off into the other areas.
Okay. All right.
In addition to that, I'd like to add an open forum for communication.
Okay.
Part of that bit of isolation comes from the fact that those who have been there for a while just aren't willing to, and I guess in this case, train those who are newer. They're not open to taking as many questions as the new employees need to be able to ask questions. So being able to open up the floor for open discussion, being able to feel like they can ask questions without ridicule so they can get the job done properly would definitely be a benefit.
Okay. All right. I think so. I went kind of a different way, more because I was trying to incorporate the additional reading about the drives and also the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So I put that there were 2 main problems, and if they worked on those, they could build a foundation where they could work on everything else. So I put that they needed to build trust. I felt like trust was one of the big issues because the older nurses didn't trust the younger nurses. And, I agree they didn't want to, the older nurses didn't want to train them. But, it's hard as you're new, you want to feel a part of the team and you want to be trusted. And, there's nothing there that makes it cohesive. And then I also put that, motivation would be the other problem. Because then you could work in the drive issue. I mean, all the drive, what helps you be job satisfaction. So, all right. So we've got some root problems. So as far as the nursing staff, how well has Barbara Norris done in her first month as nurse manager of GSU? Jonathan?
I think she's done a decent job. I mean, I think it was a good move. I think it was a good move to kind of pull them out of their element and get them to an offsite and figure out, what was going on. I think she probably needs to, I think she maybe lacks some skill in that area, but at least she got the conversation going. So even if she's kind of lacking in skill, she has at least created an avenue forward. So overall, I think she's on the right track.
Okay. All right. Owen?
I would agree with Jonathan. I would say that she's sitting kind of on a precipice at this point where she could easily go one way or go the other way. She seems to have shown a little bit of frustration, which could be understandable with the hours that she's been having to work and everything, the way everything's been going. So I feel that is somewhat understandable, but I think she's sitting on that. She needs to take some direct actions and make some moves and really continue but she seems in the write-up or in the write-up of the case study, it seemed to indicate that she realized the importance of the performance reviews and her growth. So she has, I think, a lot of the basic elements that will get her there as long as she moves forward from where she's at. All
right, Steve?
I think as long as there's progress being made, she's doing all right. The very fact that she's able to help them identify the problems very much shows that there is progress, because you cannot change if you don't even know what you're going to change. So I think for right now, it seems like she's doing all right. Now, can she do better? Yeah. Could she use some help? Probably. I also think that it might be good to get somebody else to help dedicate towards some of the time to help alleviate her amount of stress. But for now, she's got to push through it.
So do you think that, because she had mentioned that is it Betty or Betsy, or that is her friend that was her mentor that, helped her make the decision to go and get her master's. Do you think, I feel like she would be a good resource for her, even though she told Barbara not to take the job? I think she still would be a good resource because she wants to make her unit like that one. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess.
So, I mean, I think that if she needs a resource, that would be a really good one. And I think she was a good choice. I think she had the qualifications. I think it's just, I don't think she knew exactly what she was getting herself into, if that makes sense. I mean, she knew it was bad, but I don't think she knew how bad until she actually got there.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that 29 of the 33 employees asked for one-on-ones within like the first couple of weeks of her taking over.
Yeah. Well, because they're all having issues and they all want to air the laundry, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what changes is she trying to make and why? What changes? It should be R. What changes? Well, no, what changes is she? Okay. What changes need to be made? Why should she make those?
Well, she does want to turn the unit around.
Yeah.
But how? Right?
Right. So let me put this out. One of the things that she said is she gave them an example when they were at the offsite of how would you feel if I came to you and let you help me make a decision, like on, if we hire somebody, or if we have it, or if nursing can do it, let them have a say. Would that be a wise change for her to do?
I think
yes, it would.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it goes along with the second article that we read on motivation. It talks about performance management and resource allocation processes, and making that whole process very transparent. So even though you have an employee that might get their pet project cut, they understand the process that it goes through and that the process is very fair. I think she's taking that action, and that she's saying, look, here's a solution. Let me offer a solution. What if we did this? And obviously she's going to have to work through, because she's got some selfish individuals working on her staff.
Yeah.
Or just very unhelpful. She's going to have to work through those issues, because there are going to be times that people like that will tend to get hurt over, well, you didn't take my idea, so you're just not listening to her. So she needs to make sure that she handles it in the proper way, and that she's very understanding and look and say, letting everyone know, similar to our write-up when we talked about the investing company. She just needs to let everyone know, hey, a decision has to be made, and we're going to make the best decision. We're going to hear everyone's, but ultimately we need to make a decision on it. And so I think in that sense, she's doing the right thing.
Okay. So kind of like Catherine when she wanted them to have some conflict, because if you at least if you have some conflict and air out your grievances, or not grievances, but air out the issues that you foresee, then that gives you, then you can take part in the ownership of it as well.
Of the solution. Yeah. And then that also helps people, especially when you have people bottle things up, and you could sense that in the meeting that turned into a much longer meeting than she was hoping. There were a lot of bottled up emotions, and even airing those, it doesn't solve it, but it does help. It does help those that are feeling those feelings that they were at least listened to, that they had a voice.
Right.
And then depending on where it goes from there, they'll feel, I think when they see her trying to work through solutions, they will feel better about it.
Okay.
I think also by providing options for them to choose from, letting them actually make the choice will help in that process of alleviation as well, because it would allow them the opportunity to feel as if they are part of that system. I think that was kind of mentioned already, but it just helps them to feel like they are making a difference at this point.
I would be
I'd
very careful about that, where you put out a set of options and say, you guys choose. In my experience, that can backfire on you at times. I think a lot of times it's, let's hear opinions.
Right.
But ultimately, as a manager, it's your responsibility to make that decision.
Right, but it's better if you can get them to, so when she has these meetings, it's better for them to at least be able to voice their opinion and have it be heard. And then, then she can say, okay, but then she can kind of work them as a group to try to get them at least all on the same page.
Yeah, and I guess that's the only distinction I was making.
Right.
Was that Stephen had just said, put out an option and have them choose one. In my experience, that's not I would never put out something like that. I would never say, oh, here's 3 options, you guys choose one. I would discuss it, but ultimately the manager needs to be the one making the decision. And if you maybe threw out an option that wasn't necessarily your favorite option, it could come back and it could bite you in the end.
True.
I think it depends how I agree with you, Owen, and I think what you're saying, I just wanted to maybe clarify my thoughts on it too. If a manager goes into a discussion, and I don't think this is what you're saying, but I just wanted to clarify my position. If a manager goes into a discussion having already predetermined what they're going to decide, and then fakes a discussion and then sets what they're going to do, that actually has, in my opinion, the worst effect possible, because you're faking like you're listening and everybody knows that you're not. But if you in reality say, based on the discussion, I will make the best decision for our group, you have the full discussion, and then you as a manager still make the decision after having listened to everybody, I think, which may end up being the same decision you had prior to, but I think that's a different process, and I think that is important. Otherwise, people stop showing up to meetings, or they'll just totally tune out during the meeting because they know it's not a real discussion. You're convincing them of what you want to do. Yeah,
thank you for clarifying, because I didn't intend it that way. My personality, I don't make decisions before a discussion. I always try to leave myself open to persuasion, to hear other points of view, and say, okay, I can. So I don't like to try to make decisions before going into something like that. I might have an opinion one way or another, but I would never. It's sort of like when we go through our hiring process and we go through interviews. Working for a public agency, it's difficult sometimes to get interview panels to see, hey, you can't decide beforehand who you're going to hire, because you never know who you're going to have apply for the job. And sometimes you have these preconceptions of, you'll have someone interviewing for a secretarial position, and they happen to be best friends or a friend to this, somebody that's, that they're going to be interviewing with. And, and a lot of times there are those preconceptions, well, they're friends with them, they're going to get that job. And sometimes it happens, but for my own personal, I always approach it of, we never know who we're going to get when we get applications, and we're going to base our decision based on their experience, their performance in their prior jobs, and then go from there. So I agree that you can't go in with a preconceived decision. You have to approach it as let's have a discussion, let's come up with ideas, That's why I kind of dislike that idea of, throwing out 3 different options and or something and saying, pick one. That it kind of locks you into a decision that you would maybe regret later on.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to say, or Steve?
I guess if I were to follow up on that, I didn't necessarily intend it to be that all the decisions would be
Democratic.
When I propose that kind of idea, it's usually with the implication that these are decisions that you as a manager would approve of, because otherwise why would you propose the ideas in the first place? But yeah, I am grateful for actually hearing the other side of that, where it does make sense to hear an open discussion, get feedback, and then make a good choice from your end. And I think that also makes sense from the perspective of the fact that you have the large picture, whereas the employees may not know everything about the entire situation. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are 3 obstacles to affecting change should Norris anticipate, and how should she address them? I really think they need to send the person that writes these questions back to school, because sometimes, I mean, yeah, 'cause after you read them out loud, they're like, what?
It's not just this class either. It's almost all of the case study classes. I had a case study this week. It was in another class where they asked a question and the critical word was missing. It said something like, how should they, missing the word, in order to accomplish? And I was like, I'm totally going to have to guess at what they were saying.
Oh boy.
So sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to diss them, but I mean, I have made a few corrections. There are some I was typing it up at the last minute because I actually am babysitting my granddaughter. And so she sleeps, but not a lot during the day. And so, I'm really off schedule. So anyway, so what are 3 obstacles that could affect how what are 3 obstacles of the changes she wants to make?
I think lack of experience or training is going to be one of them.
Okay.
I think funding is going to be another. And then just poor communication, poor pre-existing communication is going to be another.
Okay.
On that communication piece, I'd say you're going to need to work with the employees quite a bit for them to be willing to open up, and let that bottled up emotion and problems just kind of work its way out of the works.
Right.
I would say history would be also probably be one. The history with one another, because it's been ignored for so long,
Right.
is something that's going to crop up. It's going to and she could address it by having frank conversations with them all, getting them in 2 different groups, obviously, because they work different shifts, and bringing them in and saying, hey, look, I know that this has not been ideal, but we need to start on a new page, and everyone needs to let go of their frustrations that they've had in the past, which doesn't guarantee that they will, but at least having a discussion about it,
Right.
People will be able to air kind of their thoughts, and it'll get most people on the same page. And then you just deal with the individuals one at a time that continue to have problems with it.
Right. So, I do foresee that, there's going to be somebody's going to quit. You just can't, because there's going to be somebody that just doesn't want to accept the change or doesn't want to participate in what the change needs to be. I think that's she needs to be able to anticipate that, and she needs to go, and she does need more help. I know they have a hiring freeze, but you can't run a hospital on short staff. So I think that's an obstacle she's going to have to face, and probably come up with some solutions for that as well.
Yeah, and that's a discussion she just needs to sit down with her director and go, look, if you want me to solve this problem, this is what I'm going to have to do. And this is the support I'm going to have in order to do it.
So I'm wondering, I know this isn't part of the changes, but I'm wondering if the hiring freeze is so bad, if they wouldn't just allow her to have 3 full-time pool people come right over and just be assigned to their unit all the time.
Where they could be cross-trained and...
Yeah. And they would be more on board with the whole team than...
I would agree.
Than having them just... not that this is part of this, but I just thought of that would be... If she can't hire anybody, maybe she could say, well, then she would maybe be able to say, I need this. And, maybe that would be more of an opening for her to get at least some people that are more cross-trained in her area and more, more on call just for her area, the pool people.
Well, and I think that idea of hers about the secretarial could go along a discussion with her manager would go along the same route. Would say, okay, if you're not going to let me replace there, at least give me some help in this fashion. And it's a lot less expense to the hospital for a secretarial position than what it is for a nursing position.
Right.
And that could alleviate some of the stress.
True.
I think she's going to have to prove herself in other areas before, because I think they've probably already tried throwing money at the problem. So I think she's going to have to prove that she's managing the other issues well enough to start throwing money at it before she's going to get more funding.
Right.
But I think I agree. I put funding as one of the major obstacles, but I think that's probably going to be the last thing that breaks loose, because she's going to have to prove that she's not just trying to throw good money after bad money.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Owen, you mentioned working with them based on shifts, and I think maybe if we could get a dedicated person to work with one group and another dedicated person to work with the other group, and just kind of take it and manage it in smaller chunks, that might also help. If you could get
have a supervisor per shift. Yeah. So, all right. Okay, so now we're going to shift, and we're going to go shift to drive theory. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit about the drive theory. So the drive to acquire, can anybody really briefly tell me what the drive to acquire is? Sorry, I have all my papers mixed.
You want me to take this one?
Well, if anybody wants to. Okay.
Okay, so it's a drive to acquire is a reward system based on performance, individual performance, or, as I kind of saw it as I was reading through it, it could even be tied to team performance. But that drive to is, basically your efforts. You feel like your efforts are rewarded for what you put into your job.
Right.
And also the wanting to be promoted or to some sort of recognition in some way for what you've done.
Okay.
Whether it be an emotional, just like a thank you, or whether it's in pay based or pay for performance, I think is what they used in the write up.
Right. Okay. So how well does the GSU reward system fulfill the drive to achieve and acquire?
It doesn't.
I know.
Big fail. We give them a big F for that one.
Yeah. Anybody want to say why it fails? Or I mean, I agree that it
Because
fails.
it doesn't do it at all. It has no. It's all based on seniority. I mean, it's
Well, and it's not even that, because apparently everybody, according to everybody got the same raise, no matter how good they were.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think the drive to acquire it also, like Owen was saying, is recognition for things. Because there was one nurse who said that I can't remember if she was going back to school or she got a certain credential, and nobody acknowledged it at all.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, not only did she not get a raise, but nobody even said, "Great job for doing that."
Well, and she did it on her own time. Right.
Yeah.
I remember reading that as well. And, even acknowledgement is, I mean, I realize that during this time there's been a downturn, but even just acknowledging the effort that somebody puts forward is, plays an important part. I mean, if you feel like you're doing good at your job, you're more likely going to continue to do good or want to do even better. But whereas if you're, how many people, I mean, those old, the senior staff of that nursing group, how long have they been without a thank you besides from the patients? I mean, is that why they're bitter? And, are they feeling, I don't know why they would stay, but anyway, dedication to patients, I guess. All right. The drive to bond. Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one.
Okay.
I'll just take it from the book or from the reading here. It's basically it's talking about how many animals bond with their parents, kinship group, or tribe, but only humans extend that connection to larger collectives such as organizations, associations, and nations. So basically, this one is just the natural occurrence that humans have to reach out to others and form groups. And while this is while it can be a good thing where we can create large groups of people who work together, it also can be detrimental if that group is close-knit, and in the sense of people reach a point where they stop reaching out.
Right.
They stay closed in within the little group that they've created. And I think that's what happened with this GSU, is that they've got their smaller groups and they're not willing to reach out to the new people that come on, and it just doesn't create a large entity as it should.
Okay. So how well does GSU's culture fulfill the drive to belong and bond?
What are their biggest issues?
I think it is. I think that, they don't have any solidarity amongst them. I mean, it sounds like to me they may have a few little cliques like the older nurses, but there's a lot of backbiting and gossiping behind, and it not necessarily gossiping, but complaining about others behind their backs. And I mean, that doesn't lead to wanting to belong or even to bond. All right. Does anybody want to do the drive to comprehend?
I can do that one.
Okay.
So it essentially is like the logic behind the organization.
Okay.
And being able to understand why things happen in a certain way and to be able to anticipate that. So like if you do X and Y is the result this time, then you would expect that if you did X again, that Y would be the same result. And I think GSU struggles with that a lot because there is there's no process. There's no processes, it seems like, behind what they do. They just kind of pick it up as they go. So I think they struggle a lot with that too.
Okay. All right. So did they pass or fail on that?
I would say very low score on that too.
Very low score.
Yep.
I would agree.
Okay.
It's just missing that ability to comprehend the importance of what they do in the framework of what they do.
Right.
So the nurses, I think you could see within them, you could see the desire to serve the patient,
Right.
but in doing so, they miss the importance of helping another nurse to learn a skill better, or helping them to understand. So obviously there was a lack of training in the way of the hospital and training people,
Yeah.
their staff, but also there's a lack of understanding there, which I think that's what that in order to comprehend, it encompasses all of that, understanding what your role is, why is it important to what the company does, how does each aspect of what you do, so your job description, affect everything else within the organization. So I would agree, very, very low score in that area. There's not that comprehension or understanding there yet.
Okay. So the drive to defend, so we naturally, as human beings want to defend ourselves, and I mean, as a mother or as a father, especially a mother bear, will defend her cubs, so at me, I would defend my children, and I would want to believe the best in them. And so we want to defend everybody. So on one side, I want to just say that the drive to defend for nurses extends to their patients, right?
Yep.
So some of those nurses that had the issue where they were spending more time doing things that were not patient oriented really bothered them, because they needed to be there to protect those patients, or to support them, or help them out. So that was one of their issues. But as far as like in a group setting, in humans, it manifests itself not just as aggressive or defensive behavior, but also as a quest to create institutions that promote justice, that have clear goals and intentions. So for them, they don't have clear goals and intentions. And that's one thing that Barbara really needs to work on, is giving the staff clear goals and some intentions, and also have a transparency on what they're going to do for their reviews. They need to be able to know. It can't be a guess. So I have to tell you, I have not seen my review from last year yet. So for the company I work for, I have no idea what my review was or what I need to work on. And it's been, 7 months into the new year. I have no idea what my new goals are or what I need to be working on. So I think that that's how those nurses are feeling. If they don't know what the review is, they don't know what they need to do to improve, or even have an opportunity to improve. Anybody else have anything to say about that?
Yeah, on the positive side of the drive to defend, I think if you create a kind of a mission or a culture where the right things are at the center of what you do, then the drive to defend can be a very positive thing. In the text, it talked about how the drive to defend can be detrimental because it can be avoidance of change. It can cause an avoidance of change because we don't like change.
Right.
But I fortunately, one of the, I think, good things at my company is we can defend certain things. Like I had actually just this last week, I felt like the client, one of our mottos is the client at the center of, or the customer at the center of what we do. And I had a meeting with a bunch of other employees, my peers, on a project. And I just said, look, if you can't put the client at the center of what we're doing, you get off this project. And it's very clear that you aren't client centric because you're doing this, this, and this.
Right.
So I was in a positive way, was able to use the drive to defend that had been established by the company to advance the company's goals. So the drive to defend, while it kind of seemed like it was almost a negative thing in the text, can actually be a very positive thing too.
Oh yeah. I don't think it's necessarily a very, I got from the text that it led to fairness, because that was one of the other issues, is some of the nurses felt like people were being favored.
Yeah.
You know, if you apply that also in the reward section, when they were talking about it, they talked about, I can't remember the name of the two banks, but the one bank taking over the other. They said, you know, they talked about that reward system being very biased, but when the new reward system came in, which that's what they said, you would have expected the old bank, the other bank, to have been reluctant to the change. But even though it was rigorous, it was fair, and they saw that and they embraced it very quickly. So I think as long as you use the drive to defend and are you kind of back it up. I kind of like why they said that. They said that you can't use one without the other. So it has to be this relationship between all of them, that you're using all of the aspects of it. So in relation to that drive to defend, you can see that as long as they comprehend the importance of what's being done, they will embrace that change, as long as they can see the importance behind it.
Okay.
And I'm willing to say that each of these actually work in tandem with one another. I mean, it almost seems as if it's in order, that first you have to have a desire to do your job. You want to have some kind of achievement for doing the tests that you're doing at work. And then as you're doing that, then you'll want to reach out to those who are in the same field,
right,
and then seek to comprehend, to gain more knowledge on the field of those that you work with, and then you want to defend the station that you've got at that point, because you actually have something worth defending. So to me, it seems like this was drawn out in quite a deliberate way, but
right.
it does seem like GSU is failing in all of these respects, and in order to make the changes, they're going to have to identify that these are the areas where they need to change.
Right. Okay. All right. So finally, what do you think? What should Barbara do? What should be the very first thing she should do? I mean, I'm just throwing this out. What do you think? I mean, now that we've had a chance to discuss, I mean, I wrote my paper and I've already turned it in. And so what do you think? I mean, I have different ideas now than I did when I wrote my paper. So what do you think? What do you think she should do? What should be her action plan for this?
I think she should seek or create a plan.
Yeah, okay. Create a plan. Okay, number one, she really needs to come up with a plan. Okay.
I was going to say that she should get some help, but before she can do that, she has to know what it is that needs to be done first, or what it is the goal of the changes should be.
Okay, so maybe she should go to her immediate supervisor and show him the list and ask him which one he would think would be the top priority, or do you think, I don't know, what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that she provide what? My computer's decided to boost its fans.
For the company's mission statement.
Okay. So you think she should make a unit mission statement, or Owen?
Yes, I would say that a unit mission statement, so that something to guide their decisions by.
Okay.
So that as they begin to make decisions, and even as she's approaching management to discuss the needs, she can really say, look, this is the focus. So, looking at what the focus of the hospital is, and keeping her request in sync with what those mission statements are, and then both of what her department's mission statement is, so that they make sense to administration or to the supervisors as they approach them.
Okay. That's a great idea. Even though I reread that book, and I thought about it, but that was not even on my radar. I was so focused on the other things that we've read. What about you, Jonathan?
I don't Well, I don't have a first thing necessarily, but I had several things that
Okay.
I thought that she needed to do. I think she does need to create a reward system, and even with a budget freeze or whatever, it appears like she doesn't have a whole lot of money to do very much with. But I think that she could still create a reward system. What I said is she should take who she thinks are the best nurses, the most tenured, the best trained nurses, and those nurses give an award to the most improved new nurse.
Okay.
And what that'll do is that will kind of, I think, start to drive a bond between the younger or less trained nurses with the more tenured, and it will give the more tenured nurses kind of a platform to say what they to look for the good in the new recruits.
Okay.
And then I also thought that to go along with that there needed to be a culture of unity that's created. And I think Owen is right that they need to have a mission statement, but independent of mission statement, they have to kind of bond together. So to change their culture, I said that they needed to have like a mentoring partnership
Oh yeah.
between tenured nurses and kind of newer nurses. And I think that they have a hiring freeze, but I think she'd be able to find money to say, hey, once a month go to lunch or dinner together. I mean, she could create an environment where there is mentoring going on.
Yeah.
Then I also think that she needs to have formal job descriptions where people know what they're doing and why. And she needs to create job descriptions for the gaps that she sees, like training. I mean, when she's working like 16 hours to make sure the next shift coming on has what they need to be able to be in place and do the job that they're hired for, I think that she needs to create job descriptions that encompass the major gaps that are there and hold people accountable to those. And then kind of finally, I think she does need to do, I would say initially, do semi-annual performance reviews. There have actually been documented precedents, legal precedents, where people have been fired for poor performance. And the individual went back and sued the company and said, you never told me I did a bad job.
Right.
Show me my last performance review. You have a schedule where you're supposed to keep these performance evaluations, and you haven't done one in 3 years, or it's been 7 months into the new year, you haven't told me a single thing that I'm doing wrong. And they won the lawsuit. So from kind of a legal liability standpoint, but also just from an overall performance standpoint, they really need to know what's going on and how they're doing.
I agree. Well, great. Oh, okay. So anybody have anything to add?
I'm good.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, you guys, thanks so much for coming and thanks for participating. Good luck on your fishing trip, Owen. I hope you get some big ones. All right. You guys have a great time, and hopefully I can figure out how to get this taken care of now.
Sorry about that. I had myself muted, and so I have to find the buttons. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. So now I got to figure this out.
Did you record it to the cloud or to your computer?
To my computer.
So once you end the meeting, it will take a while to like generate the video.
Uh-huh.
It will generate the video in a file, and all you have to do is go to YouTube and drag the file. You'll hit the upload arrow in YouTube. Then all you have to do is drag the file to there, and it will upload it.
Okay. I'm trying to make this large again. Okay.
Anyway, most you won't be able to do anything until you end the meeting, and then it'll save it to your computer, and then you can just upload that file.
Oh, okay. Here it is. It just came up. Okay. So I can stop.
Yeah. So it'll kick me out of the meeting. So I'll see you not next week, but the week after, right? We don't have one
Right,
next week.
right. Next week. So, Steve, we're
Okay.
all done. I'm sorry you had computer problems.
Yeah, my computer fan decided to just go into overdrive for some reason.
We don't have one next